Julius Caesar wasn't born into a vacuum. He was born into the heart of an ancient Roman family, though it was no longer at the height of its power. As for Julius's family, his father, Gaius Julius Caesar, was a patrician nobleman from Rome. He was a moderate politician, known for his commitment to military and political duties. However, he was unable to reach the highest positions due to his relatively limited influence. His mother, Aurea Cornelia, was the daughter of one of the most influential aristocratic families in Rome. She was known for her intelligence and strong character, and for teaching her children how to read politics and understand people. From his father, he learned courage and military discipline, and the importance of maintaining the family's reputation in Roman society. From his mother, he inherited political acumen, a deep understanding of human nature, and the necessity of maneuvering between alliances and conflicts without losing control. The combination of a cautious father and an intelligent mother created an ambitious young man, capable of seeing opportunities where others saw dangers, and to exploit his opponent's weaknesses with sharp intelligence. This early family training was the first cornerstone of his future rise to unparalleled power. Julius Caesar was not alone in his family life. He had full brothers and close relatives. However, family life was not tranquil. His older brother and relatives served as stimuli for competition and learning. Every conversation, every small challenge, was an opportunity to refine his character. Caesar learned early on that staying ahead required more than just strength or wealth, but intelligence, shrewdness, and keen observation of others. Education in Rome was rigorous and focused on developing intellect and debate. Learning to read and write was fundamental to literature and history. It gave him the ability to understand political and military texts. It was a tool for understanding people, analyzing opponents, and using arguments to his advantage. Early military training instilled in him discipline and strategic planning. He learned that strength without intellect does not make leaders. This combination of family rivalry and rigorous education made him a perceptive young man, keenly observant and determined to control his destiny. Every lesson, every challenge, was a piece in the puzzle of strategic thinking that would later make him one of history's greatest leaders. The state of Rome and the palace before Caesar's rise. First, the Senate. It was composed of nobles mired in personal conflicts and narrow interests. Decisions were often influenced by money and influence, not by the interests of the Republic. Internal conflicts weakened the Senate's ability to control events. Second, the palaces were centers of power, where aristocratic families gathered for political planning and intrigue. These elites were often rivals among themselves, leading to clear divisions of power. Third, the people suffered from high taxes and widespread poverty. There was growing public anger towards the ruling elite, and the people were looking for new leaders to defend their interests. Fourth, the Roman army was a large force, but it often obeyed its commanders more than the state itself. The loyalty of soldiers was based on rewards and individual leaders, not on the law or the Republic. Fifth, the conflicts among the nobles and the rivalries between political leaders created a power vacuum. This vacuum created an opportunity for the emergence of a powerful figure like Caesar, who was able to exploit it to his political and military advantage. Caesar's major military campaigns took place after his initial political rise, not before. Let me clarify the chronology precisely. Before his political rise, Caesar held minor positions and began building his alliances. He did not have sufficient influence to lead large campaigns. Any military activity before his rise was limited, often involving training or short-term service as part of minor government or military posts. After his political rise, after securing the support of Pompey and Crassus, Caesar was able to lead the campaign in Gaul, which was his most important and famous military achievement. Begin expanding his military and economic influence by controlling strategic regions. Later, he attempted a limited invasion of Britain to enhance his military reputation. His political rise, was the foundation that enabled him to acquire sufficient army and influence to wage major military campaigns, not the other way around. His military campaigns were a direct result of his early political rise and the alliances he forged. Julius Caesar's first positions. First, Quaestor, 69 BC, the first official position in the Roman political hierarchy. Responsibilities included managing public finances and the financial resources of the provinces or the capital. Caesar exploited this position. He cultivated a wide network of contacts with civil servants and provincial officials. He began building a financial and popular reputation through small projects or by supporting important officials. Second, Idle, 65 BC, responsibilities included overseeing markets, public infrastructure, festivals, and the Roman games ludi. Captivated by Caesar, Caesar organized massive and extravagant festivals of unprecedented scale, which won the hearts of the people. These festivals cost a fortune, but he used his considerable debt as a political tool to leave a lasting impression. He proved that he knew how to connect the popular base with his political life. Third, Praetor, 62 BC, responsibilities included judging and overseeing the laws of the Republic. Julius Caesar exploited this. He skillfully managed the courts to gain allies among the aristocracy, occasionally even appearing to deliver justice to the people. He combined judicial and popular power, making himself the voice of both law and justice. Caesar knew he wasn't wealthy enough for major political campaigns. He raised funds through personal loans from the wealthy and bankers, and shrewd investments in land and provinces. He used the money for several purposes: financing lavish festivals to attract the public, subtly bribing elites to secure temporary loyalty, and later funding military campaigns in Gaul. The result? Despite the debt, he gained widespread popularity that surpassed the influence of the traditional aristocracy. Caesar before Caesar was not just an ambitious young man, but a complete political strategist before becoming a military leader. His understanding of the people, financial management, and symbolic strategies in his early positions enabled him to later gain popular loyalty before military loyalty and overcome the traditional aristocracy. Building a semi-permanent political system before wielding absolute power. In other words, leadership is not just about the sword or the army, but about a deep understanding of the people and the system. Caesar did not limit himself to what he learned at home or in regular school. He received an education focused on politics, philosophy, and rhetoric from brilliant teachers in Rome. Among his most prominent teachers were Marcus Antonius Gracchi, who taught Caesar the arts of rhetoric and logic. He taught him that words can be mightier than the sword, and that the ability to persuade is a crucial tool in politics. Licinius Augustus, a professor of philosophy, who introduced him to the world of critical and philosophical thinking. He taught him how to understand human nature and predict the behavior of others. His influence later became evident in his military and political strategies. He thought ahead as if playing a game of chess. And the local military trainers. The education was not merely theoretical, but practical. It included training in discipline, leadership, and battle planning. Here, he began leading small groups, testing his abilities and discovering his unique leadership style. This combination of rhetoric, philosophy, and military training created more than just a soldier or a politician. Rather, he was a complete leader. He was able to read people before a battle and understand the political environment before taking any step. Caesar held minor positions in local government. He learned how to deal with the Senate and the administrative system. He forged alliances with powerful figures such as Crassus and Pompey. First, the alliance with Crassus. Crassus was the richest man in Rome and one of its most prominent leaders. He provided financial and political support to Caesar. This helped him finance his campaigns and projects. This alliance gave Caesar the economic power needed for any great political ambitions. Second, the alliance with Pompey. Pompey was a renowned general with widespread popular and military influence. The alliance with him gave Caesar military and popular support, especially among soldiers and citizens. This alliance enabled him to confront his opponents in the Senate and expand his political influence. Third, the formation of the First Triumvirate, composed of Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. An informal political triumvirate effectively controlled Rome. Each member of the alliance benefited from the others. Caesar, financial and military support, and political cover. Pompey, enhancing his popular standing and controlling the allies. Crassus, protecting his economic and political interests. This alliance was the foundation for Caesar's rise to absolute power, before it later collapsed after Crassus's death and the escalation of the conflict with Pompey. Here, popular support was exploited. His name was associated with issues that mattered to the people, such as tax reductions and improved conditions for soldiers. He gained popularity among the common people. As for Julius Caesar's early military achievements, he participated in small military campaigns to bolster his popularity and credibility. He earned the respect of the army and a strong reputation. Meanwhile, he engaged in several legal and political maneuvers. He used judicial and political positions to his advantage. He introduced bills to gain the support of the Senate or to limit his opponents. These actions were the first step towards his rise to actual power. He became the true power in Rome. After accumulating influence and alliances, it paved the way for taking significant steps later, such as crossing the Rubicon. First major campaign. Gaul 58–50 BC. This was his largest and most famous campaign. The official objective was to protect Roman allies, secure the Roman borders, and prevent local tribes from rebelling. However, the true objective was to consolidate his personal power and amass plunder. Key achievements: conquest of most of France, Belgium, and Switzerland. Defeat of Gallic tribes such as the Helvetians and Weldingians. Reaching the Rhine River. Political impact of the campaign. It made Caesar a powerful and influential figure in Rome. It paved the way for his later absolute power. After securing his alliances and political support, Caesar obtained the position of governor of Gaul, roughly equivalent to modern-day France and Belgium. Main tribes. The Triple Alliance of Gallic tribes. Local Europeans, with powerful tribes such as the Alumni and Hylocians. Battle of Beloacum, the first major confrontation against the Gallic alliance. Caesar's victory solidified his military reputation in Gaul. The Battle of Alesia and the defeat of Favinia in a long siege led to complete control over most of the Gallican tribes. The campaign in Britain 55–54 BC, the first Roman attempt to conquer Britain. It was more of an exploratory campaign than an actual invasion. The objective: to project power to the British tribes and demonstrate Roman supremacy. The result: it did not achieve complete control, but it gathered information that the Romans later used. A short exploratory campaign to bolster military influence, it did not result in a permanent occupation but increased his reputation. The result: Rome expanded significantly on its northern borders. A huge increase in Caesar's wealth and his army. This gave him sufficient power to confront his rivals in Rome later on. Here is his most significant political achievement. Caesar became an unavoidable figure, a military and political force in one. The Battle of Bibracte, the largest battle at the beginning of the campaign against the Helvetians. Caesar employed a strategy of dividing and gradually encircling the enemy before direct confrontation. The result: the defeat of the Helvetians and their forced retreat to their homeland. This solidified Caesar's reputation as a decisive and astute leader. Securing the northern borders. After defeating the Helvetians, Caesar launched small campaigns against other tribes to demonstrate Roman power. He established temporary fortifications along the Rhine to prevent future attacks. The immediate results: control over large areas of northern Gaul, strengthening the army's power and reputation. the soldiers became loyal and trusted his leadership, laying the groundwork for later campaigns. These battles formed the basis for his major campaigns in the rest of Gaul. The civil war against Pompey and the Senate 49–45 BC. It began when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, declaring war on the Roman Republic. Key battles. Battle of Pharsalus 48 BC. Let's delve into all the important details. This was a decisive battle in the civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. After Caesar crossed the Rubicon 49 BC and opened the civil war, Pompey retreated to Greece and assembled a large army of loyal Roman soldiers. Army. Pompey. Approximately 45,000–50,000 men, including a large cavalry force. Caesar. Approximately 22,000–25,000 men, a smaller but more experienced and better trained army. Near the city of Pharsalus in central Greece, an open area suitable for both infantry and cavalry battles. Pompey was confident in his numerical superiority, especially his cavalry. Caesar's plan. Army deployment. A weak front line was positioned to avoid direct confrontation with Pompey's cavalry. A strong reserve force was hidden behind the front lines, ready for a counterattack. He knew that Pompey's cavalry would attack the right flank of the Roman army, so he prepared a strong unit to confront them directly at the first attack. The attack began with Pompey's cavalry attempting to outflank Caesar's right wing. Caesar anticipated the attack and sent a reserve force to attack Pompey's cavalry from the front and the flank, thus confusing them. Here Caesar's tactical superiority became evident. The experienced Roman soldiers launched organized attacks. Pompey's cavalry was unable to capitalize on their numerical advantage. As the fighting progressed, the army turned against Pompey, and the soldiers began to flee. The result? A crushing defeat for Pompey, heavy losses among the soldiers, and the majority of the army was destroyed or captured. Pompey himself fled to Egypt, but he was killed immediately upon arrival on the orders of the Egyptian governor, who feared Caesar. This paved the way for Caesar's conquest of Greece in the east. The historical impact. A prime example of Caesar's tactical brilliance and exceptional leadership, as he defeated a larger and numerically superior army. Caesar became the de facto ruler of Rome after eliminating his most important rivals. He cemented his reputation as a virtually invincible leader and the skill of the disciplined and well-organized Roman army. A decisive defeat for Pompey. The Battle of Freedom 49 BC. Let's turn to the Battle of Freedom 49 BC, and explain all the details. After Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon and began the civil war against the Senate and Pompey, he had to secure Italy before heading south or east. Pompey withdrew south to gather his allies and troops, leaving a small force to confront Caesar in northern Italy near the Freedom River near Pontea. The main objective: to halt Caesar's advance and control the strategic routes leading south. The two armies Caesar, approximately 15,000–20,000 men. His soldiers were Gallican veterans, disciplined, and enthusiastic. Pompey, approximately 30,000–35,000 men. The army was larger, but many of the soldiers were less experienced or had weaker loyalty. Strategy and tactics. Pompey. He relied on numerical superiority to encircle Caesar and prevent his forces from advancing south. Caesar. He employed a strategy of intense attack and rapid maneuver, capitalizing on the experience and discipline of his soldiers. Key tactic. Caesar successfully severed Pompey's supply lines and secured vital routes. He utilized flexible troop deployment to counter Pompey's attempts at numerical superiority. The battle began with Pompey attempting to wear down Caesar's forces through a massive attack on the flanks. Caesar countered with a concentrated assault on the army's center, disrupting Pompey's ranks. Despite Pompey's numerical advantage, Caesar's experienced soldiers gradually broke through his main lines. After hours of fighting, Pompey withdrew south, leaving Caesar in control of the area. Result: a strategic victory for Caesar, enabling him to advance rapidly south and conquer Italy. The defeat damaged Pompey's military credibility with his allies and initiated a series of victories that would later lead him to the major Battle of Pharsalus. It reaffirmed the strength of Caesar's army's experience and organization over the enemy's numerical superiority. The Battle of Munda, 45 BC. We come to the Battle of Munda, 45 BC, considered Julius Caesar's last major battle before his assassination approximately a year later. After Pompey's defeat and death in Egypt, the Spanish Civil War, Hispania, continued, with forces loyal to Pompey, led by Pompey the Younger and Protosinus, allied. The objective: to disrupt Caesar's consolidation of power in the empire and restore Pompey's influence in the West. Caesar needed to control Spain to cut off any potential supply lines to his enemies. The two armies, Caesar's, approximately 28,000–30,000 men, highly experienced soldiers from the Gallican campaigns and the Civil War. The enemy, Pompeians, approximately 50,000–60,000 men, clearly numerically superior, but many of the soldiers were less trained and disciplined. Strategy and tactics: the enemy relied on numerical superiority and a flank attack to encircle Caesar. Caesar employed a mobile defense tactic with a strong reserve force in the rear, similar to his approach at Pharsalus, but he faced a much larger army in challenging conditions. The challenge of the battle: the flat, open terrain allowed the enemy to attempt to outnumber the flanks. Pompey's army tried to break through Caesar's lines quickly before the Roman reserves arrived. The battle began with a heavy bombardment from archers and cavalry, followed by close-quarters combat. Caesar sent his reserves in time to reinforce his right flank, which was on the verge of collapse. The battle raged for hours and was the most intense and costly of his military career. Despite being outnumbered, Caesar's experienced soldiers eventually managed to encircle and break the enemy lines. The result: a decisive victory for Caesar, but one that cost him thousands of soldiers. Many prominent leaders of Pompey's loyalists were killed, including Protosinus and Pompey the Younger. Spain came under Caesar's direct control, and no serious rivals stood in his way in the Western Empire. The Battle of Mointa is considered the largest and most difficult battle of Caesar's military career in terms of intensity and casualties. He consolidated his power and unified his control over Rome. The result: the elimination of his political opponents, effectively transforming the Republic into a one-man rule under Caesar. Campaign in Egypt, 48–47 BC. Let's examine Julius Caesar's campaign in Egypt in detail, focusing on the background, events, and consequences. Following the Battle of Pharsalus, 48 BC, Pompey the Elder fled to Egypt seeking political asylum. Caesar followed Pompey to Egypt after his victory at Pharsalus, but upon arrival, he was surprised to find that Pompey had been killed immediately on the orders of the Egyptian ruler, Ptolemy XIII, who was seeking Caesar's favor. Egypt was then embroiled in an internal power struggle between two brothers: Ptolemy XIII, the official king, a young and weak figure, heavily influenced by his advisors; Cleopatra VII, the king's sister, claiming joint power, intelligent and diplomatically skilled. Objectives: politically, to consolidate Roman influence over Egypt and prevent any coup against Rome's interests. Strategically, to secure the supply and financial route to Rome from Egypt and prevent any potential alliance with Caesar's enemies. Personally, to support Cleopatra VII as a future ally and to benefit from her power in the region. Events of the campaign: arrival at Alexandria. Caesar arrived with a relatively small force, approximately 4,000–6,000 soldiers. He found the city divided between supporters of Ptolemy and Cleopatra. Fighting in Alexandria. Violent clashes erupted in the city between Caesar's forces and Ptolemy's supporters. Caesar was forced into a brief siege of the royal palace, known as the Royal Palace of Alexandria. Alliance with Cleopatra. Caesar entered into a political and emotional alliance with Cleopatra. He helped her regain power at the expense of her brother, Ptolemy, who later fled and drowned while attempting to return to Egypt. Military campaign outside Alexandria. Caesar and his followers confronted Ptolemy forces, who were attempting to regain control. Key battle. The Battle of the Nile, in which most of Ptolemy's forces were defeated, consolidating Cleopatra's power. Outcome. Caesar's victory. Egypt was effectively under Roman influence, and Cleopatra became a personal and political ally. Certainty of Cleopatra's rule. She continued to rule in partnership with the Romans. Long-term impact. This opened the way for Caesar to focus on wars in the East, Syria and Persia. He helped raise money and resources from Egypt to support future campaigns. He demonstrated Caesar's ability to combine military power with politics and diplomacy. During the Civil War, he supported Cleopatra VII against her brother Ptolemy XIII. Key achievements. Securing Cleopatra's throne and strengthening Rome's influence in the East. Following the Egyptian campaign, we move to the post-Egyptian period, 47–45 BC, a time when Caesar continued to consolidate his power and control over the eastern and western regions before his assassination. Let's break down the events chronologically. 1. The return from Egypt to the east. After installing Cleopatra on the throne, Caesar remained in Egypt briefly before moving eastward into Phoenicia and the eastern Mediterranean. His objective was to restore Rome's influence in the eastern regions and secure allies against any threats from local rulers or the old Greek alliances. During this period, he regained control of some coastal cities. He forged diplomatic alliances to ensure that local resources and forces remained under his influence. 2. The campaign against Bithynia and Darius, Persia. 3. After installing Cleopatra on the Egyptian throne, Caesar's objectives were to secure the eastern borders of the Roman Empire, to prevent any potential alliance between his rivals and the kings of the East, to consolidate his political and diplomatic influence before returning to Rome to confront Pompey's last remaining opponents. The eastern empires, such as the Seleucids, Bithynia, or ancient Persia, were affected by Roman turmoil, but no major power was capable of directly challenging Caesar militarily. Eastern moves. The Eastern Sea and the Phoenician coast. Caesar secured control of strategic ports and cities. He forged alliances with local allies such as the Bithynia to bolster regional stability. Impact on ancient Persia. Persia was fragmented into local kingdoms following the partial collapse of the Seleucid Empire. Caesar did not attack it militarily, but sent diplomatic and reconnaissance missions to assess influence and secure financial resources. The objectives of this phase: securing supply and trade routes between Egypt and Rome, preventing any Eastern powers from supporting his rivals in Rome or Spain, demonstrating that Caesar was the supreme ruler of the Eastern Mediterranean, even without major battles. The outcome: no major or well-known battles were fought against Persia or Bithynia, but it was a significant step: diplomatic and political dominance over the Eastern Mediterranean. Consolidating Caesar's financial and political resources before returning to the West. Caesar cultivated the image of a leader who controlled not only military might but also shrewd alliances and strategic threats. On his return to Rome, his eastern campaigns brought Caesar into limited engagements with the remnants of his rivals' forces, but these were more focused on securing political consolidation than on major battles. This reinforced his image as a decisive leader capable of imposing his will on any adversary. 3. Return to Italy and the Spanish War. After securing the East, Caesar returned to the West to confront the last pockets of resistance from Pompey's supporters in Spain. The Spanish Campaign, 46–45 BC. Yes, the Spanish Campaign, 46–45 BC, was Julius Caesar's last major military phase before returning to Rome, and it was one of his most intense and difficult campaigns. Let's delve into the details. Background: after consolidating his control over Egypt, Caesar returned to the west to confront the last strongholds of Pompey's remaining supporters in Spain. Key leaders of the resistance: Pompeius the Younger, Gnaeus Pompeius, Pompey the Elder's son, leading an army of Pompey's remaining forces. Lucius Scronius and Soponius, generals loyal to Pompey. Caesar's main objective: to eliminate his last military rivals and secure Rome completely. The two armies, Caesar's, approximately 28,000–30,000 soldiers, all highly experienced from previous campaigns, distinguished by their discipline and loyalty. The enemy, 50,000–60,000 soldiers, clearly numerically superior, but mostly newly recruited or less experienced. The major battle. 1. Battle of Ilerda 49 BC, the first major engagement in northern Spain against Pompey's forces. Caesar successfully used tactics and flexibility to overcome the enemy's numerical superiority. The result: the Pompeys were forced to retreat south, allowing Caesar to gradually consolidate his control over northern Spain. 2. Battle of Munda, March 17, 45 BC, the decisive battle, the last major battle between Caesar and the remnants of the Pompey army in southern Spain. The armies: Caesar, approximately 28,000–30,000 men. The enemy, approximately 50,000–60,000 men, with a clear cavalry advantage. The battle, lasting for many hours, it was the fiercest battle of Caesar's military career. Caesar faced the larger army but skillfully maintained his front line and reserves behind the lines, attacking the enemy's weak points at opportune moments. The Pompey army collapsed following Caesar's clever tactics, and the majority of the army was annihilated. The outcome: a decisive victory, eliminating the last pockets of resistance. Many Pompey commanders were killed, including Pompey the Younger and his followers. All of Spain came under direct Roman control, and Caesar no longer had any serious rivals in the west. Impact: it confirmed Caesar's complete control over Rome and the Western Empire. It demonstrated Caesar's ability to defeat a numerically larger army through tactical skill and military discipline. It allowed him to return to Rome as the undisputed leader, with an army more loyal to him than ever before. It elevated his political standing absolutely, paving the way for his reforms in Rome before his assassination in 44 BC. Key battles: the Battle of Illipia. We will focus on the Battle of Illipia, Ilerda, summer 49 BC, as it was Caesar's first major engagement in Spain, prior to the Battle of Montana, and played a crucial role in the Spanish campaign. Background: after Caesar crossed the Rubicon and the civil war began, Pompey withdrew south and rallied his allies in Spain. Illipia, modern-day near Lida, northeastern Spain, was a strategic location for controlling the north-south route. Caesar's objective: to prevent Pompey from conquering Spain and to secure supply lines before advancing further south. Pompey's objective: to deplete Caesar's forces and prevent him from unifying the western part of the empire under his rule. Army's side number characteristics: Caesar approximately 15,000–20,000, highly experienced, excellent discipline, absolute loyalty. Pompeians approximately 35,000–40,000, numerical superiority, a mixed army of both modern and old Romans. Location: Libya, a mountainous region with valleys and small rivers, difficult for a large army to maneuver. Caesar was forced to use the terrain to compensate for the enemy's numerical advantage. Strategy and tactics: Pompey, relying on numerical superiority to cut off Caesar's supply lines. Besieging Caesar in the mountainous region. Caesar used tactical skill to overcome the numerical advantage, reorganized his forces flexibly and exploited the terrain to repel enemy attacks. Ensuring the security of supplies by building bridges and support points on the rivers. Course of the battle: the clashes began with attempts to encircle Caesar and prevent his southward advance. Caesar launched precise attacks on the enemy's weak points instead of engaging in a full-scale, direct confrontation. Utilizing military engineering skills, constructed embankments and bridges to secure the army's movements across the difficult terrain. The enemy attempted a concentrated attack, but Caesar forced the army to withdraw gradually while preserving his own forces. The result: a strategic victory for Caesar. He lost no significant part of his army and forced Pompey to retreat south. This opened the way for Caesar to gradually conquer northern Spain. It demonstrated Caesar's ability to overcome numerical superiority through tactics, military engineering, and flexibility. Ilpi was a crucial first step before the final victory at Munda. Ilerda and the Battle of Munda. Now, let's examine the Battle of Munda, March 17, 45 BC, in detail, as it was Julius Caesar's last and most difficult battle. Background: after returning from Egypt and securing the eastern Mediterranean, Caesar directed his forces to Spain to confront the last pockets of resistance from Pompey's loyalists. Key enemy commanders: Pompey the Younger, Gnaeus Pompeius, son of Pompey the Elder. Lucius Scribonius and Soponius were prominent generals of the remnants of Pompey's army. The enemy's objective: to prevent Caesar from gaining complete control of the western part of the empire. Caesar's objective: to definitively eliminate his rivals, secure Rome, and consolidate his absolute power. Forces side number characteristics: Caesar approximately 28,000 30,000 highly experienced, highly disciplined, and absolutely loyal. Pompey approximately 50,000 60,000 numerical superiority, large cavalry force, less experienced troop. Location: near the city of Mointa in Andalusia, southern Spain. The flat, open terrain was suitable for cavalry and a concentrated assault, giving the enemy an initial numerical advantage. Strategy and tactics: Pompey, relying on the numerical superiority of his cavalry and attacking on the flanks to contain Caesar. Attempting to break the army through continuous pressure on the flanks. Caesar, he employed a mobile defense tactic with a strong reserve at the rear. He maintained the army's unity and exploited the soldiers' discipline and maneuverability. The reserve intervened in time to support the flank threatened with collapse. The battle began with a bombardment from archers and cavalry, followed by direct infantry engagements. The Pompey army pressed forward on the flanks, but Caesar concentrated his attack on the enemy's center, breaking their ranks. The battle raged for hours and was the bloodiest and most difficult of Caesar's military career. As the fighting progressed, the Pompey army crumbled, the survivors were hunted down, and the main commanders were killed. The outcome: a decisive victory for Caesar. The last pockets of resistance in the west were eliminated. Pompey the Younger and most of his generals were killed. Spain came under direct Roman control, and Caesar faced no serious rivals. Caesar once again demonstrated his ability to defeat a numerically larger army with superior tactical skill. This victory gave him absolute power before his return to Rome, paving the way for major reforms before his assassination in 44 BC. Munda objective: to eliminate the last of Caesar's opponents within the remnants of Pompey's army. Result: a decisive victory, and Spain came under direct Roman control. 4. Return to Rome. After the victory in Spain, Caesar returned to Rome in 45 BC. Rome effectively became a centralized government under Caesar. He ended the major military opposition. He began implementing political and administrative reforms, reorganizing the territories, reforming the calendar to the Julian calendar. He became the undisputed leader before his assassination approximately a year later in 44 BC. Conclusion: the period after Egypt was one of consolidating and establishing complete control over Rome and the Western Empire. The campaigns were not all major battles, but rather strategic, diplomatic, and tactical maneuvers to consolidate influence and control over vital regions. This stage revealed Caesar's political side more than his military side, but he still relied on the reputation of the veteran army and past victories to achieve his goals. After Julius Caesar effectively assumed power in Rome following his campaigns in Gaul, Egypt, and Spain, a period of absolute control and major reforms began, but it was also fraught with political tensions. Let's break down the events. 1. Absolute power. Caesar became the de facto ruler of Rome, with the army and all financial resources under his control. He was granted honorary titles, including consul for life, which gave him extensive powers over the Senate, even though the Republic nominally remained in place. 2. Political and administrative reforms. The Julian calendar, 45 BC, reformed the old Roman calendar, adding a day every 4 years. He helped standardize timekeeping and improve civil administration. Land redistribution distributed land to veteran soldiers and the poor to foster popular loyalty. Deposed some traditional nobles who refused to cooperate with him. Financial and administrative reforms regulated provincial taxes and improved the flow of resources to Rome. Transferred some power from local councils to the central government. 3. Social and cultural reforms. He supported the arts and sciences to showcase Rome as a global cultural center. He initiated massive building projects in the city, including the expansion of the Roman Forum and public buildings. 4. Reactions. The popular public. They rejoiced in his victories and reforms, considering Caesar a hero and savior. The traditional elite, Senate, they felt threatened, fearing the loss of power, especially after Caesar became consul for life. Political threats. These tensions led to a plot to assassinate him on March 15, 44 BC, Ides of Mars. 5. Events. Immediately after securing power, control over the state was almost absolute, but he began to face resistance from a clandestine elite. His assassination was planned by a group of senators led by Cassius and Brutus, who believed that Caesar had transformed the Republic into a despotic, one-man rule. Conclusion. After securing power, Caesar consolidated his control over the army, resources, and the Western Empire. He implemented political, financial, and temporal reforms that improved administration. He faced opposition from the traditional elite, which ultimately led to his assassination. This period was the height of his political and military influence, but it was fraught with danger. After the victory in Spain, the battles of Illipia and Mointa, and Caesar's return to Rome, we entered a pivotal phase in Roman history, one in which power and politics were completely transformed. Let's outline the events in detail. 1. The situation after Spain. The elimination of the last pockets of resistance from Pompey's loyalists in Spain gave Caesar complete control over the western part of the empire, including the Italian peninsula and Spain. The elimination of any direct military threat from his rivals. The army became completely loyal to Caesar, with unwavering allegiance after years of campaigns and victories. All prominent enemies were killed, including Pompey the Younger and the rest of his generals, thus ending Pompey's influence definitively. 2. The return to Rome. 45 BC. After the campaigns, Caesar returned to Rome as the undisputed ruler. The army was with him, which made his political position absolute. There was no threat to his authority from within. 3. Political actions. After his return, Caesar embarked on major reforms. Reforming the calendar. He introduced the Julian calendar to correct errors in the old Roman calendar. Reorganizing the lands. He distributed land to soldiers and the poor to secure popular loyalty. Modernizing the financial and political administration. He strengthened the central government's control over the provinces and secured resources for the empire. These reforms solidified his image as an unrivaled leader but alienated the traditional elite in the Senate. 4. The final military and political situation. Caesar remained more powerful than ever, with the army, resources, and political alliances all firmly in his grasp. Rome was effectively under his de facto autocratic rule, despite the continued pretense of a republic. This absolute power paved the way for his assassination in March 44 BC, as some senators perceived Caesar as a threat to Roman liberty. Conclusion. After the campaigns in Spain, the great civil war that began with Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon came to an end. Caesar became the de facto ruler of Rome, with full authority to implement reforms. The army, resources, and alliances were all under his control, making him the most powerful man in the empire. This period is more political than military, as Caesar relied on his previous victories to build absolute power before his sudden demise. After the victory in Spain, the battles of Illipia and Mointa, and Caesar's return to Rome, we entered a pivotal phase in Roman history, one in which power and politics were completely transformed. Let's outline the events in detail. 1. The situation after Spain. The elimination of the last pockets of resistance from Pompey's loyalists in Spain gave Caesar complete control over the western part of the empire, including the Italian peninsula and Spain. The elimination of any direct military threat from his rivals. The army became completely loyal to Caesar, with unwavering allegiance after years of campaigns and victories. All prominent enemies were killed, including Pompey the Younger and the rest of his generals, thus ending Pompey's influence definitively. 2. The return to Rome. 45 BC. After the campaigns, Caesar returned to Rome as the undisputed ruler. The army was with him, which made his political position absolute. There was no threat to his authority from within. 3. Political actions. After his return, Caesar embarked on major reforms. Reforming the calendar. He introduced the Julian calendar to correct errors in the old Roman calendar. Reorganizing the lands. He distributed land to soldiers and the poor to secure popular loyalty. Modernizing the financial and political administration. He strengthened the central government's control over the provinces and secured resources for the empire. These reforms solidified his image as an unrivaled leader but alienated the traditional elite in the Senate. 4. The final military and political situation. Caesar remained more powerful than ever, with the army, resources, and political alliances all firmly in his grasp. Rome was effectively under his de facto autocratic rule, despite the continued pretense of a republic. This absolute power paved the way for his assassination in March 44 BC, as some senators perceived Caesar as a threat to Roman liberty. Conclusion. After the campaigns in Spain, the Great Civil War that began with Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon came to an end. Caesar became the de facto ruler of Rome, with full authority to implement reforms. The army, resources, and alliances were all under his control, making him the most powerful man in the empire. This period is more political than military, as Caesar relied on his previous victories to build absolute power before his sudden demise. The method of planning Caesar's assassination is more important than the assassination itself. First, why did the idea of assassinating him even arise? The common misconception is, he was assassinated because he was a tyrant. The truth is more nuanced and harsher. Caesar did not formally abolish the Republic, but he emptied it of its meaning. The Senate remained, but without real power. Major decisions passed through him personally. The turning point. In February 44 BC, he was granted the title of Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. For the Roman aristocracy, this was an unwritten declaration of monarchy, and monarchy was a sacred red line, ever since the expulsion of the last king of Rome, 509 BC. Second, who were the conspirators? And here lies the irony. The main leaders: Gaius Cassius Longinus, a Roman aristocrat, a seasoned military and political figure. He served under Pompey in the Civil War. He fought Caesar at Pharsalus, and lost. Here's a crucial point. Cassius was not only intellectually defeated, but also politically broken. His relationship with Caesar was one of unbridled enmity. Unlike Brutus, Caesar was not close to Cassius. He pardoned him formally, but he didn't grant him real influence. He didn't trust him. Cassius felt that he was kept alive, but marginalized. This is the most dangerous situation for an ambitious and intelligent man. His real motivation was that he feared permanent marginalization. In addition to political resentment, he realized early on that Caesar would not back down. He understood something Brutus didn't. Caesar wasn't building a temporary phase, but a new system. And here's the question: why did he need Brutus? And here's where Cassius's intelligence shines. Cassius knew his reputation was synonymous with ambition, sharpness, and vengeance. Had he led the assassination alone, it would have appeared as a dirty power struggle. Therefore, he recruited Brutus. He played on his name. His history, his moral dilemma, the key phrase quoted by Plutarch, "Rome will not forgive us if we do it without you." Cassius, in the planning, coordinated the conspirators, custodiously chose the timing, insisted on the assassination within the Senate. He also wanted to kill Mark Antony along with Caesar, but Brutus refused, a fatal mistake. This point is crucial. If Antony had been killed, the subsequent civil war would not have occurred. Cassius saw the danger. Brutus did not. And on March 15, 44 BC, in the theater of Pompey in Rome, Caesar was assassinated beneath the statue of his old enemy, Pompey the Great. The Senate was in formal session, which gave the assassins legal and public cover. The reason for choosing the location: Caesar appeared without military escort, believing the Senate to be a safe place. The Senate presented a perfect tactical trap: no escape, surrounded on all sides. The number of conspirators: approximately 60 to 70 senators. Their objective: to share responsibility, create a sense of collective duty, and prevent any backing out of the assassination. Everyone participated, and no one bore sole responsibility. The stabbings were to be simultaneous, ensuring a swift death and leaving no opportunity for escape or defense. After Caesar entered the Senate, he expected a normal meeting. Without military escort, the first stab came from Casca, the weakest of the conspirators. Then came the collective attack. The conspirators stabbed Caesar up to 23 times, according to some sources. The stabs were to the chest and back, each blow doubly symbolic and effective. When Caesar saw Brutus approaching, he said, "Et tu, Brute? Even you, Brutus." Caesar surrendered psychologically, not physically, after seeing his closest confidant. Brutus's stab wound wasn't the most fatal, and Caesar collapsed dead in the Senate chamber beneath the statue of Pompey. The conspirators initially attempted to justify their actions constitutionally. Their aim: to restore the Republic. But they failed to control the army or the streets. Terror gripped Rome. The army remained loyal to Caesar. The people began to gather in the streets against the assassins. One of the conspirators' major tactical errors was not killing Antony along with Caesar, because Mark Antony was Caesar's political advisor and loyal general. He survived and rallied public opinion against them. They lacked a plan to control the army after the assassination. Everything relied on symbolism and legitimacy, and the result: a civil war erupted just weeks later. Julius Caesar wasn't assassinated because he was weaker than his opponents. Rather, he was stronger than the system he was born into. Republican Rome couldn't accommodate a man who understood politics as war. Legitimacy as a tool, the people as a force, not mere decoration. Caesar didn't destroy the Republic with the sword. He revealed that it was already dead before he arrived. A Senate that spoke in the name of liberty, but acted according to the logic of privilege. An army with no loyalty to the state, and a people without genuine representation. When they killed him, they thought they had saved the Republic. But the harsh truth: the Republic died with him, not because of him. His assassination didn't set Rome back, but rather propelled it a step faster toward what it was already headed toward: empire. From Caesar's blood, Augustus was born. From the idea of one man, a system of rule emerged that lasted for centuries. Caesar lost his life, but he won history. As for those who killed him, they gained a moment, and lost the world.